Good afternoon, Wealth Our Way family. What is going on? It is your man, Charles Tank Harris, the founder and chief visionary officer of the financial literacy platform Wealth Our Way, where our motto is wealth is not only for the wealthy. Today is Tuesday, April 27th, 2021. It is a blessing, as always, to be here with you. I want to give a special shout out to everyone in the audience today watching this streaming live to Facebook or YouTube. And then, of course, the big Wealth Our Way salute to my fam that checks me out pre-recorded overnight, whether they get that 15 minutes in the car on the ride home, which don't watch the video on the ride, let's be safe, or whether they're, under the sink, fixing a leak, whatever they're doing, if they can get 15 minutes of financial literacy in, I'm loving that. So this week, we're going to talk about estate planning. I have been spending the last month, actually, me and my staff have been spending the last month helping our foundational level clients establish wills for estate planning. It's brought up all types of questions. I've also addressed a couple of groups over the weekends when I do my webinars, also more questions. And although I have in past broadcasts covered estate planning and talked about wills, talked about trust, it's time for a refresher. Information can always come back and recycle itself. So I want to spend the week hammering down on estate planning. And I hope to have as a special surprise, well, it won't be a surprise now because I'm telling you, one of the young ladies that's in my network who is an estate planner, I'm hoping that we get her on the broadcast at some point this week to answer any questions, because as I tell you guys, I am a financial literacy resource, 24 years of financial advisory experience, but I do not know all things. I am not a CPA. I'm not an accountant. I've passed the Series 7 and Series 6, which are investment licenses, and I have a wealth of experience. But when we start to hammer down on more technical, detailed terms, I like for you guys to hear 100% from the experts in the fields. So what I'm going to do this week is I'm going to stay high level until we get our estate planning expert on, and I'm going to cover the three main topics I want to cover this week are wills, living trusts, and durable power of attorneys or healthcare proxies. And I'm going to start off today just giving you kind of a brief introduction into estate planning, what it means, because as you know here at Wealth Our Way, I tell everybody, I'm going to address you guys like you're in kindergarten when it comes to financial literacy. And if you have your master's degree already, that's cool. There's always more to learn and you can chime in on the topics. But I want to break it down for everybody who's never heard of stuff before and just give you that basic fundamental building block to learn from. And then we can get deeper as we ask more questions and there's more engagement. So we're going to start with what estate planning is. We're going to then talk about wills today. Tomorrow we'll move into, I think we're going to do durable power of attorneys tomorrow, and then we'll do trust on Thursday, and then hopefully we'll wrap with our estate attorney on Friday. I'm gonna make that happen. I'm not going to hope, I'm going to make that happen. So with that being said, when I look for information, there's a couple of trusted sites that I rock with on the internet. You guys already know how I feel about NerdWallet. Another one is Investopedia. So just to kind of, before we get into the topic, let me tell you this. We live in the information age. There is nothing that I tell you here that you can't find out without me, that you couldn't Google, you couldn't ask someone else, you couldn't go on Bing or another search engine. The difference between getting information and applying or understanding the information is where I come in. As I've said before, I'm like the Rosetta Stone. The Rosetta Stone was something that was used many, many centuries ago to interpret hieroglyphics and other different foreign languages to people. It interpreted it to them so they understood. I'm your Rosetta Stone. I'm going to interpret information that we find on the internet so that you can understand it and you can ask questions, because you can't ask questions of an Investopedia page. So today I'm going to share my screen with Investopedia so that you guys can see their stance on what estate planning is and what a will is, and we'll go from there. So let's go to the share screen. Bang. Now, I don't know if you guys can see this. Let me see in the chat if you guys can read the estate planning screen here, or if I need to somehow, some way, shape, or form, try to make it a little bigger. But I'm going to read out. First of all, I'm going to tell you where to go. If Renee, if you can put it in the chat, that they need to go to investopedia.com, and in the search bar, just type in estate planning. So if you go with investopedia.com and in the search bar, type in estate planning, you will be able to get this information. So I'm going to go over what they're talking about with estate planning. Estate planning is the preparation of tasks that serve to manage an individual's asset base in the event of their incapacity or their death. Incapacitation is what it actually says. The planning includes the bequest of assets to heirs and the settlement of estate taxes. So let's hammer on that question right there. The planning includes the bequest of assets to heirs. What does bequest mean? What is an asset? Who are heirs? So let's talk about that. Bequest, so is the opposite of request. When you request, you are asking somebody for something. When you bequest, you are giving something to somebody. So planning can include how you wish to give something to somebody. Everybody here who's been on here regularly knows that an asset is something of value that you own. So it helps you plan how you will give something you own to an heir. An heir is someone who receives something from you. They're a beneficiary. They're an heir. They are in line to receive something from you. The settlement of estate taxes. This is a really, really interesting topic because we just had our presidential powers turn over. And when the presidential powers turn over, a lot of times tax laws change. So right now, everybody probably is hearing about short-term capital gains and long-term capital gains being affected, income taxes being affected. One of the other taxes that will be affected are estate taxes. Estate taxes are just that. They are taxes that are made on your estate, and your estate is what is left over after you pass away. So your estate, if we talk about a balance sheet, and a balance sheet is what we own, assets, less our liabilities, what we owe, that net number is our estate. And right now, estates get an exclusion of $5.25 million per person. So for the vast majority of Americans, you will not have an estate tax issue. If you're married, that exclusion is doubled and it's 10.5 million roughly. It's actually like 11.25. Reminder, I always tell you guys to Google numbers because they change so frequently, it's impossible for me to remember every number. But I want to say that the exclusion is 5.25 or $5.625 million a person. With that being said, when I do estate planning for my clients, I try to make sure that they don't lose their exclusion or their exemption. And people say, what do you mean by lose their exemption? Well, a spouse can give all of their assets upon death to another spouse, and there's no estate tax, there's no tax of any kind. However, if spouse husband dies and is worth $20 million, gives it all to spouse B, wife, who was worth $20 million. Now she's worth $40 million. When she passes away and goes to give all her money to her heirs, she gets one exclusion, $5 million and some change. His exclusion never happened because he didn't need to use it because he gave it to his spouse, and his spouse didn't have any taxes. So he skipped his exclusion. So what I do is I set up a carve out for my clients so that before they give all their money to their spouse tax-free, that exclusionary amount is carved out to go to their heirs tax-free when spouse B passes. But that's a little deep for this conversation. Most estate plans are set up with the help of an attorney experienced in estate law. I will say this, I don't like that terminology because most are not. Most estate plans, they are done by Zoom, LegalZoom, Rocket Lawyer, prepaid legal, because most people, when we're talking about the vast majority of people, we don't have sizable estates. What it should say is most complicated estates and most high value estates should be set up with the help of an attorney. I completely agree. The key takeaways with estate planning, they include determining how an individual's assets will be preserved, managed, and distributed after death. They include setting up a will, which is what we're going to talk about today, setting up trusts, and making charitable donations to limit estate tax. They also talk about naming an executor, naming beneficiaries, and setting up funeral arrangements. A will is a legal document that provides instructions on how an individual's property and, more importantly, the custody of their minor children, if any, should be handled after death. So let's go. Give me a second to pull up the will section of this document so that we can look at the will. So, writing a will. A will is a legal document. So the first thing you have to realize is that in our country, our laws are both federal and state laws. When it comes to your will, you have to follow your state's laws. So when we aid our clients in filling out the template for our will, we make sure that it follows the state that they live in. Because if you form a will in Arizona and they have different processes for settling an estate than they do in California, you will run into trouble. So you want to make sure you update your will. You want to update your will when your marital status changes. You want to update your will when there are new beneficiaries, i.e. you have a child. You want to update your will when significant assets change hands. And then if none of those things are occurring, I say review and update your will every 3 to 5 years. I like 3 years because things change. I used to work with a company that provided worksite benefits. And one of the biggest things that we discovered, we were working with unions, had tens of thousands of employees, municipalities, tens of thousands of employees, and they would get life insurance either from their job given to them or some that they could purchase supplementally. And what they would realize is when we came in and did a review every 3 to 5 years, over 30%, over a third of the people working there had a beneficiary on their life insurance policies that they didn't want on there anymore. It was an ex-spouse. It was a friend who wasn't a friend anymore. It was a child who they don't speak to anymore. It was something always going on, and they would have never updated it if we didn't come and prompt them to update it. I'm going to sneeze. That is live streaming for you. I sneeze. Hope everybody said God bless you. So with that being said, when we deal with the will, one of the big things that comes up is what the actual process of going over your will looks like. When you draft a will, you will be naming an executor for your will. The executor is the person who reads with the court your will and make sure that all of your wishes are satisfied. You have to understand, you're dead when they're reading your will. This is not the time. Appreciate the well wishes and the bless yous, and I'm about to hit it off with a quick tissue. This pollen is crazy right now, dander and pollen. So thank you guys all. With the reading of your will, when you have an executor, it needs to be somebody you trust, and it needs to be somebody who you've reviewed your will with. You want to make sure that not only are all these things written out, but that you guys talked it out and that they understand exactly what your wishes are, because you're not going to get any more say in the matter. And the other thing that when we were preparing wills for our clients in the past couple of weeks and helping them review their estate, what you realize is that a lot of people, the will isn't enough, because the will is just going to tell you what happens on that day. Hey, do all of this today. When you need stuff to move forward in perpetuity, when you need stuff like you have young children, you don't want to give them all the money on day one, you need a trust, because a trust will explain how things are to move forward. Whereas a will deals with the probate process right then. That probate is the process of a judge going through your will, making sure that it was authentic, that you really wanted these things to happen. And then they read out the will. They take issue with anything that needs to be done right then. Give my cousin my grandmother's ring. Okay, we're going to give the cousin the grandmother's ring. We're going to do all the things that need to be done spot on that day. And then if the will says, oh, by the way, there is the client ABC living trust that is now a testamentary trust. It's once you pass, So that's one, and we'll go over this with trust tomorrow. Trust can be established when you're alive, and it's a living trust because you're alive. Once you pass your intestate, it's a testamentary trust. It's you're dead. It's a residuary trust. It's what resides after you've passed away, and instructions are given on how you want your assets disseminated, and then that trustee will oversee those wishes. So we are keeping everything surface level. Today was a surface level understanding of estate planning and a will. I may come back and do a little bit more about a will tomorrow before we slide into the trust, because I feel as though there's a little more to cover. But we're going to spend the whole week on estate planning. And like I told you, by the end of the week, I will have an estate attorney here to answer any individual questions. So we went over by a minute, but I'm happy to be back in my studio in my lab. I'm going to come out off the screen share and tell you guys that I look forward to tomorrow, continuing estate planning week. Any questions that you guys have, please put them in the chat. Please email Renee. Make sure that we get all your questions answered, because that's what I'm here to do. And I want to just remind you guys, this is the type of conversation that we should have now. You know, I was talking to a good friend of mine about estate planning, and I have, between children and stepchildren right now, I have 10 people to take care of. And we were just talking about what we're leaving people. And I said, you know what, at a bare minimum, I'd like to leave each child $100,000, an income producing rental property, and a 10% stake in a business. And he was like, man, that's a lot. And I didn't think it was a lot when I was saying it out loud, but I thought about it after we talked, and it is a lot, but it's doable. And what's the point of working hard? What's the point of living this life? Like, we're here for a reason. We shouldn't be trapped in this quote unquote rat race where we get up every day and we do what's necessary to pay some bills. And every so often we get a break by taking a vacation. That's what we're stuck in. That's what Wealth Our Way is here to get you stuck out of. We want to get you out of that. We want to make sure that when you pass away, that your work has been tallied up, and that you did your greatest efforts, and your heirs benefit from it, and that you've left them further along than you found yourself when you started. I can help you guys do that, but you guys got to help yourself as well. So here's where you'll get that information. Yes, as it was put in the chat, you know, with the passing of DMX, you know, Swiss Beats addressed the audience at the funeral and made sure he brought up estate planning. Everybody needs a will. It does sort out a lot of problems. It keeps people from arguing. Well, nothing keeps people from arguing, but it at least lets your wishes be known when you've passed away. So with that being said, I'm going to sign out. Went a little long today, but I'm back in the lab. You see the backdrop. You know, I'm back up in New Jersey. Been on the road. I apologize for missing yesterday, but it was a 13-hour travel day. You know, just keep grinding. Let's come back tomorrow at 12:30. And remember, wealth is not only for the wealthy. I'll see you guys tomorrow at 12:30. Take care.